in the UK, you pick when you're really young, 18, what you do in university at college. And I was lucky enough to be quite artistically minded. Like I liked drama and acting and English. I was also good at the sciences. So it was really like drama school or medical school. And I picked a medical school often because I loved TV, like ER and Nip Tuck. So I went to go and be a fancy plastic surgeon. And then I did medical school and did a lot of theatre writing and a lot of shows and stuff there. And then when I actually started the job of being a doctor, it was incredibly stressful. And it was not quite the world that I thought it would be, that we got told it was. The job of being a doctor, like helping people and being there and the knowledge of the human body is so amazing, but just the system you're in is so challenging and really high pressure, often very negative, the kind of energy feedback. But I worked in the emergency room for, about 8 more years after that in London. But I went to film school after my first 2 years, knowing that I wanted to do something different. I had this creative part of me that I couldn't do. And I was very lucky to be able to learn all these stories from working as a doctor. Like it was almost like every day was little vignettes of life from people. So people from very, very wealthy, very, very poor, all different stratospheres of life, on like the best day of their life, the worst day of their life. And so I got this amazing life training, I suppose, being a doctor. And then when I moved to Berlin and did a film school course here and then met the people that were wanting to do a kind of gritty medical show, it's like everything perfectly fused together. And I was like, okay, let's do this. And I didn't really realize when we were making it consciously how much I was burning to tell those stories. And I think a little bit how much trauma, I suppose, I had from the job. And I think writing is a little bit therapeutic to the writer. And I think I needed therapy for the job that I had. And it was really nice to be able to express those stories and talk about it and sort of release it and analyze it and get it into the world. And I hope that feeds into the authenticity of the show. I hope that feeling of truth comes across somehow. It does for me. And I think, interestingly, what doesn't get talked about is a lot of the pressure in the scenes where it's like high medical action, like you've got to do stuff and put in lines and put in tubes. You get used to that quite quickly. Like it's still stressful, but that becomes where you actually have a lot of control. Like you have a team and everyone knows what they're doing. The minutes after you've done that, or if you lose a patient, there's no rules for that. There's no discussion afterwards. There's no team anymore. You're just you as a human having to deal with it. So I think a lot of the medical shows focus on the intense medical part, like the actual technical practicalities. And yes, it's exciting and it's interesting. But for me, the real truth of being a doctor was what you do after that and how it affects you as a person. So I would say 80% of my cases that I saw in the emergency room weren't desperately running down a corridor with bags of blood and having to save a life immediately. It was sometimes that, but most of it was people scared or sad or happy in a room and me having to be a good doctor to them and a good human being. But when you see that all the time and you have to be on that roller coaster, it does something to you. And I'm glad I got out before I did anything too bad to me, but I think you need to cope with it somehow. And I think with the show, we really wanted to show how you can cope with it, maybe not in the best way sometimes, but there's still this camaraderie and this kind of humor and this love of the people, of the humans that work in that space. And I think with the show, I was really conscious of wanting to show that, I think.